Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Before we get into today's episode, I haven't done an update on my TBR or my to be read list because honestly, it changes almost every day. like I've had the Throne of Glass series in like the background that I've been reading, and then the books in like the foreground, and those change. And especially today's book, I feel like has been on the TBR for a while, probably since it came out, which is A Girl Abroad. Is that? No, it's Girl Abroad, not A Girl Abroad. So Girl Abroad by Elle Kennedy. Finally finished it. That's what the episode today is going to be about. And so I can cross it off my list. And it was honestly kind of hard to come up with a TBR list because I don't know. I feel like the last little while, I've just have found a book and I'm like, okay, I'm going to read this. Like I haven't gone off of my list. And so I was scouring through my Kindle, just kind of coming up with like, okay, what do I really want to read? Next, I think I think I mentioned it last episode, but the husband and I went to Barnes & Noble and he picked a random book out for me to read. And so I think I'm going to read that this week, and then he'll be on the episode for next week. And then the week after that, I'm finally going to do an episode on The Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. That one I absolutely want to do an episode about because it was so incredible. And so in the meantime, if you wanted to read it, that would be awesome because then we can like talk about it, or you can kind of know about it. Or if you're like, oh, I don't have time, but I really want to know what it's about, then, just stay tuned to the episode. But I did want to update you that I have finished the Throne of Glass series as of a couple days ago. And I can actually know, as of yesterday, I finished it. And I cannot stop thinking about it. I can't. Like, I wasn't a believer at first because, as you know, I think I read the first 3 books and then I was like, man, not for me. And that was a couple years ago. And then finally I was like, you know what? I need to read it so that I can read the Crescent City series. And so I pushed through the first 3 books, got to the 4th book. I think it was when I got to the 5th book, maybe the Empire of Storms. I think that was the one where I was like, oh, this is really good. And then I just became obsessed from there. And I do have about like half hour drive to work every day and then half hour back. So I have been listening to it, and it just, I was constantly listening to it at the very end. Like, I have been pretty sick this past weekend, and so I just like laid in bed and laid on the couch and I just listened to it, and that's how I finished it. And I will wait until the very end to do like my thoughts about it. I feel like I have so many thoughts that I want to write it down, and maybe, I don't know, maybe dedicate like half an episode to it. Because I definitely am not going to go through the series, but I just want to have an outlet. Like I need to like talk about these things. And so at the very end, I'm just going to take like a couple minutes and really get out a couple of like my most like prevalent thoughts about it. And there will be spoilers, of course. So if you haven't read it, or if you are going to read it, or if you don't want to know spoilers, then skip that part. It's going to be at the very, very end. So I'll let you know before it gets to that point. But yeah, I have so many thoughts. Like I can't stop thinking about it. So yes, I was impressed and I loved it. And I'm going to start on Crescent City soon-ish. I'm going to listen to it again, or listen to it as well. I don't know if I'm going to buy the series. Actually, no, that's a lie. I know I'm definitely going to buy the series just to have it, because I do like listening to it, but I also like reading still. And so like, yeah, I think I'll do both like I did with the Throne of Glass series. So yeah, I want to start listening to it for sure at first. A lot of people said that it's kind of like hard to grasp at first, or maybe there's just a lot that goes into it to really build the world. So maybe I should read it just so that I can pay attention to it more. I don't know. It's TBD on the TBR. You know what I'm saying? Okay, So now that I got all that out of the way, let's continue with the TBR. So the first one is Skies Over Calendonia, which I mentioned last week. It's by Samantha Young. It's the fourth book in her Highlander series or Highland series. I definitely am going to read that sometime this week because I have loved that series. I've loved the characters. I love her writing, and I did do an episode on it. I can't remember what number it was, but it's been pretty recent. So that one for sure is on there. And then I don't know how I found this book. I want to say on TikTok, but it's called The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. I honestly don't remember what it's about. Like, I don't remember why it enticed me, nothing. But if it's in my Kindle, I know that at one point I was interested in it, so I'm gonna try and read it. The next one is A Promise of Peridot. I don't know if I'm saying that word right because apparently I said onyx wrong. Because I would say onks. And then, honestly, it wasn't until I read that book, what is it, Dawn of Onyx? Something of Onyx, by Kate Golden, that I learned how to say that word. So this one is the second book to that. It's A Promise of Peridot. Peridot? I really don't know how to say that word. So that one has been on my TBR for a little bit, just because I liked the first book, so I'm hoping to like the second book. The next one is by McLean. It's called Not Made to Last, and I used to read her books a lot. Like, she came out with books a long time ago. Gosh, I want to say, I don't think I was in high school. I want to say it was about like 5, maybe 10 years ago. Maybe not that far away. Maybe like 6 to 7 years ago, I read like all of her books. And I feel like she hasn't come out with a book in a really long time. And so when I saw that she came out with this, I was like, oh, yeah, okay. I will definitely pick this up because I used to really like her and she kind of disappeared. So I have that on the TBR. The next one I have is called Burnout by Rebecca Jenshak. Jenshak, I think that's how you say it. I haven't heard anything about it. I just saw the cover on Amazon Kindle, and it had like a motocross guy and a dancer. And so I was like, ooh, I'm intrigued. I read the back. It sounds really interesting. Sounds really fun. My family is very much into like motocross and dirt bikes and everything. So I was like, okay, I will read that. It sounds super cute. So I'm excited to read that. And then I have The Crescent City by Sarah J. Maas, which I'm going to pick that up in book form and also on Audible so I can start reading that. So that is just a quick TBR, just to kind of get it out of the way. Am I going to actually read all these? I don't know. Is it going to be in that order? Absolutely not. Currently, right now, just as a quick read, I am reading Cake by J. It's just like the little J, and then it's like Bernston. And I read that book a long time ago. I mentioned it in the episode where I went over like my favorite series ever. I think that's what it was called. And that series is so good. It goes through like the individual kids, like their story, and it just was so good. And so I'm like, I want to read the first one. Like, it has always been my favorite, and it was a very long time ago. And so now as I'm reading it, I'm like, oh, the writing isn't my favorite anymore. Like, I mean, I used to be obsessed with this book. I read it so many times, and now like being to where I am now and reading the books that I have read and just kind of gauging the type of writing that I respond well to and like to read, it's kind of on like the more, I'm not meaning this as mean, but more of like an elementary writing, if that makes sense. But I do think that it was like her very first book ever written. And so it makes it makes sense, honestly. And I do know I read like the last book in the series a couple years ago, and it was so good. So I know that it gets progressively better. I just had forgotten about this first book and the type of writing, which it's fine. I still respond really well to it, and I still really like it, and I like the premise, and yeah, everything is really good. So I am gonna quickly read that one, just because I just thought about it this morning, and I was like, ooh, yeah, I really want to read that. So yeah, that one's going to be a quick read, just to kind of get it out of my system, because I mean, everyone has those urges, right? Where it's like, ooh, I really need to read that book that I've already read. It just satisfies something. So that one is what I'm currently reading right now. Okay, so that is it for TBR and the books that I'm reading, blah, blah, blah. Now let's get into Girl Abroad by Elle Kennedy. And to be honest, I don't know how I feel about this book still. Like, I loved it. And as you can tell, when I first started this episode, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this book. Because I still don't know how I feel about it. And it's because, like, I loved the story. I loved the characters. I loved pretty much everything about it. It kind of became like a why choose, or like a who is she going to choose? Because there's two love interests, and it literally is until the very end you find out who she chooses, because she doesn't know in the story who she wants either. And I get so frustrated by that. And a lot of people love it. It's like the anticipation, the excitement, like, oh my gosh, like, who is she going to choose? I don't like that. You know that I don't like anticipation. You know that I don't like surprises. I have to know these things. Like, and so I think honestly it's a personal preference, or a personal, I don't know. I mean, obviously it's a personal preference that it wasn't my favorite book because of that. So take that as you will. If you like those sort of books, I think you will love, love, love this book. For me, it was fine. It was a really, really good book, but it just didn't get me excited at the very end. I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I do love who she chose in the end, because it's who I wanted her to choose, but I wanted there to be more of like an establishment of like a relationship and, you know, all that lovey-dovey stuff, and it just wasn't there, and that's fine. And yeah, it's just, I think it's like that buildup of anticipation. Like, I had to cover, like, with my hand, like, the last page, so that I wouldn't jump ahead to be like, okay, who does she choose? And even as I was going through the book, I was like, do not look at the last page. Do not look at the last page. Do not look at the last page, because I want to be surprised. And I had such a hard time with it. But I will confirm that I did not look at the last page until I was at the last page, and it killed me. It was the worst. Anyways, okay, so we have Abbey. She is 19 years old, and just to be real, just to be open, I'm not going to tell you who she chooses at the end, because I want you to read it. There isn't going to be like spoilers in this. Like, it's just basically about the book, about the story, because there are quite a few things that I could spoil, but it is a very, very interesting story, and what she does go through, and like the story that she does unfold, like Abbey does, which I'll tell you in a minute. So she's 19 years old. Her dad is a retired rock star, which at the beginning, and even at the back of the book, like the preview, you kind of think that it's going to be more of the story of her dad being like a rock star. You think that it's going to come into the story more and more, but it really doesn't. Like, he's kind of like in the background, which is nice, because you get to know him a little bit, like her dad as the rock star in the beginning, because she's going to be going abroad to study. She is going for a year for college, over to London. Yeah, England? Somewhere in England. I'm pretty sure it's London. She's going over there for a year, and her dad, he already is like so worried about her. He's like telling her all these like facts about like women getting kidnapped and trying to be real because he doesn't want her to go. Like they have a great relationship, and he misses her. He's the only like part of her family that she has. She's the only part that he has, and because her mom's not in the picture. And so he's just like, he's a dad, like he wants to hold on to her. And so they have that little relationship at the beginning. She flies over to London, and then you hear about him a little bit just because like they text and they call, so he's like in the background, but nothing really prevalent to the story, which I thought was interesting and kind of misleading from what I've read, because I assumed that he would be there throughout the whole story, which he wasn't. So Abbey is obsessed with history. Like she loves history, and I love that for her. I want to like history, but I do not retain history. And so a lot of times I'm like, I don't know, when did World War II happen? I don't know, when did the Civil War happen? Like I don't remember. Like I don't know facts, I don't know dates, I don't know anything. So to have a character love history as much as Abbey does, I loved it. I loved that she wasn't like in marketing or like in a profession or studying a profession that's kind of mainstream. You know what I'm saying? That she loves history. So she and her dad are actually under the impression that her roommates are girls, just because they've been talking over email. And so when she gets to the place that she's going to be staying, they're all guys, which I was like, oh, that's a fun twist. So their names are Lee and Jack and Jamie. And whenever they've talked about Jack, they always say like Jackie boy. But they don't say like the Jackie boy. They just say Jackie. So they've been under the impression that they are girls, and these guys have fun personalities. So Lee is the gay best friend. We love that. We have Jack. He is actually an Australian rugby player. He's like buff, he's tough, he's like a ladies' man, but even more so, Jamie is the ladies' man. He is always out with a girl. He is the sly dog. He is just fun and flirty and just rich and, just all of it, And then they have Abbey, and she fits in perfectly with them. And as she gets like adjusted and everything, she actually goes to this estate sale at one of these big estates, and it's the Tulleys. That's their estate. Which is so, like, I want to go over to England just to see these, like, big, like, properties, big castles, big manors. Like, I want to see it all, especially when I watch, like, Bridgerton. I'm like, oh, I really want to go see these places. And going to see, or when I watched Saltburn, oh my gosh, I don't recommend that movie, but that building, or like their house, their manor, their estate, I was like, oh, this is beautiful. Like I would freaking die if I lived in one of these. Like I would love to go see those. So she goes to an estate sale there because apparently the Tulleys have a bad reputation. They've basically like squandered all of their riches and their reputation, and it's just in the dumps. So she finds this portrait of a woman, and she's just very intrigued by her just immediately. And so she actually buys this portrait, and she wants to know who this woman is, who she is to the Tulleys. She wants to know how this woman plays into the Tully family, like where she ended up. She just wants to know everything about this woman. And so she starts to deep dive. And I want to say that she does it for like a project for like, yeah, actually, I'm pretty sure she does. She wants to do it for her project for one of her classes. And so she goes into like the library, which she's obsessed with the library, and she just continues to deep dive, and she hits a lot of dead ends. And so she has to pivot with it. And she is just like this sleuth. Like she is a detective on this woman and where this woman ended up. And so she gets like deep into the Tully's history, and she meets one of like the Tully's like current ancestor or current person. I don't know what word I'm looking for. And he is not, I don't know, he plays her a little bit and says that he's like interested in helping her with this history, but then he just ends up like not being a good guy. But so this whole book, she is deep diving into this woman, and that was so interesting. Like, I was really captured by it. It kind of gave me the vibe of the Letters We Keep, the episode I did a couple episodes ago. How they like find these letters from these old ancestors and kind of really track down like the history and everything. So I really like when books have that, and this did. It had it like the whole book, and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened to this girl? And then on like the outside of the story is Abbey living her life and going to school and meeting new people, and she starts to have like a little like love interest with Jack, but then she also meets this boy or guy that is part of a band. He's like the bass player in a band, and he is just like hot tamales, you know? And so she has this like little triangle between them, and Jack knows about Nate, but Nate doesn't know about Jack. Like, they know about each other, but they don't know that they're both seeing Abbey. And she's not like dating them exclusively, and she doesn't date them exclusively the whole book. And I think that's maybe why I was like, can you just like please choose one? Because it really is hard to choose between them, because I really did like them both. I did have like my stones in the hat for a certain boy, which I won't tell you. And yeah, and so it just was like, I need to know now. So that was fun. It was fun. In the end, it's fun because a lot of books don't do this type of like storyline where you have this triangle and you don't know until the very end. So it kept me interested. It really did. I didn't anticipate it. It kept me like my attention. It kept me intrigued with like the story of this woman and how she plays into the family and like the premise of where she goes, and it really was so interesting. It really was. And so in the end, I did really like this book. Will I recommend it? Yeah. But I'm also going to tell people there is a love triangle, and you don't find out until the very end, because I really am hung up on that. I really am. So maybe love triangles just aren't for me. I know for sure that reverse harems aren't my favorite, because I really do like when they choose someone. I really do. I don't know why. I just am like, can you please just choose someone? Like, I just like when they establish like their relationship and they're getting to know each other, and I just like that part, and like it's just exciting, you know? It reminds me of the feelings of dating, and it just is really exciting. So I think that's really why I like when they just choose someone and not have a love triangle. So I mean, I'm figuring myself out as I do these episodes, you know? So yeah, such a good book. I'm not going to tell you anything more about it because it will reveal some things, but I do recommend it. It is fun. I really like Elle Kennedy as an author, and I will continue to pick up like any book she comes out with, because her timelines are good. Her characters are amazing. They just have really well-rounded, like, I don't know, stories to them. I mean, I wouldn't say that they're, I don't know, maybe I'm going back on what I'm saying. Like in other books, yes, I love it. Especially like her latest books have been so good. This one, I felt like there could have been a little bit more deeper dive into a couple of the characters. But you do find out a little bit more about Abbey, which was good. I think I would have wanted to find out a little bit more about like the love interest. Like, we don't know very much about Nate. We know a little bit more about Jack just because he's her roommate too, and so they talk more often. But I think I would have liked more with that, like the building the relationships, like building the characters up more and showing more of a background of them. But I mean, you're kind of already absorbed in the story of everything that you kind of just don't brush on it, or like you don't really focus on them not having a lot of background to them. So I mean, that's just my say, you know. Okay, so now is the time that I'm going to talk about Kingdom of Ash, the very last book of Throne of Glass. So if you don't want to hear about this book, you'll want to stop right now. But I appreciate you listening, and follow me on social media and wherever you listen to this episode, rate and review. So now that we have done all that, let's get into Kingdom of Ash. Oh my gosh. OMG. My mind is blown. It was incredible. I don't even think there was a moment where I didn't have tears in my eyes. Actually, at the very beginning, I didn't have tears in my eyes because there was like kind of a lot of torture, and I didn't really like that, obviously. But when Fenris like breaks his blood oath by himself and she escapes, I was like jumping up and down. Like I was screaming because I was like, how is she going to get out? And then, oh my gosh, yeah. So she makes it to them. She makes it to Lorcan, I think, first. Or Gavriel? No, I think it was Lorcan. And then the others come. And then freaking Rowan, he skins Cairn. I was like, absolutely. Kill him. Get him out of here. We hate him. Nobody wants him to live. So yeah, I was celebrating when I learned that. And then they're like all together, and when Elide sees her, and it just like, that was the start of it where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be crying like this whole book. And then, yeah, just how they all came together because they were all in separate like parts of like Terracin and parts of like just the whole continent, that I was like, I don't know how they're going to get together. And oh my gosh, Adian. I feel so bad for Adian. He went through the whole brute, you know, like the whole war. He was there from beginning to end. Like, I just can't even imagine like how exhausted he was. And I was kind of nervous because I was like, is he going to die? Like, there has to be someone coming in to help him because I think he's going to die. Like, and so I'm glad that he didn't. I'm glad Lysandra is still alive. I'm glad that Evangeline is still alive, even though she's like a little character. I was so mad about Barrow. I think that's his name. Lord Barrow. Oh, I just wanted to hit him. But then at the very end, he's like very gracious, and he's like, welcome to your kingdom. But I'm jumping ahead. Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm skipping so much, but I think I'm going to kind of like compose my thoughts and maybe talk about it in the next episode. But just the things that stood out. I was so worried when Dorian went to Morath and he was talking to Maeve. I was like, oh, Dorian, what are you doing? And then he tricks her with his mind, and he like takes from her that she can't like portal. Oh my gosh. It was so satisfying. And then he like takes the keys. I love that he can like shapeshift now. I love that. Just love that for him. Like, his character growth in this whole series, incredible. Like, I loved it. And then let's see. So, okay. When Kale finds Aelin, cried. I freaking cried. And then when Dorian finds Kale, I cried again. I was like, I'm just sobbing. Like, I'm just sobbing. And then when all the freaking royals were like, yeah, close the keys now, or like get rid of the keys right now, I was like, you stupid B words. Like, that is not, like, what? And so when they decide to do like the halvesies thing, I was like, okay, that will be okay. And that scene was very interesting. Like, I could, like, imagine it. Like, it was very, very interesting. And his dad to come in because his name was nameless. Like, we don't realize that he doesn't have a name because we're like, oh, it's just the king. Like, I didn't realize that he didn't have a name. And so when he takes over for Dorian, I was like, what's going to happen to Aelin? And how the gods kind of like betray her a bit. And they, oh my gosh, Elena, like, once she gets like smashed, basically, like, it's not mentioned again after that, but you just feel terrible. Like, oh my gosh, you just feel bad. Even though like she wanted to save her, which I thought was like a good effort, but in the end, it didn't work out. Okay. And then, yeah, her power basically being gone. I was like, WTF, how is she going to fight them? Like, there's literally no way that she's going to be able to fight them. And then now that we know, she does. But y'all, I was like more than like tears in my eyes. Cause I mean, when I say I was crying this whole book, I meant like I had tears in my eyes, but I was crying, like tears running down my face when the 13 made their sacrifice. I was crying. Like, I was devastated, absolutely devastated. And I mean, of course, Manon is too. I was sad when Gavriel died, but I kind of figured he would. Does that make sense? Like, I don't know. I knew one of the cadre would probably die. And I thought that maybe it might have been Fenris. Because I was like, they're not going to kill Lorcan. Oh my gosh, which let's talk about Lorcan. Because I thought he was going to die when he was about to like fall off the horse with a lead. I was like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's when I had like tears down my eyes too. But everything worked out. Yeah, everything worked out over there. Thank goodness. Because I was like, freaking a lead, you need to forgive him and be together. Like, I don't care what you have to do. Oh my gosh, yeah. So I had tears down my eyes there. Yeah, the 13, I was almost just more than just, I almost was sobbing. I'm not even going to lie. Like, that was the most heartbreaking scene. The most heartbreaking scene. And I was in the car waiting for the husband, and I just had like tears down my face. Like, it was, oh my gosh, it was so sad. Okay. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I really, really actually did like the end when they split them up, because I was like, I don't know how they're going to fight like Maeve and Erewhon. Like, I don't understand. And I really liked how it wasn't predictable. Like, I know that Irene had said like, oh, I can do it. Like, I can take him, like, Erewhon away. Like, I can do it. I never really put much into that because, I mean, it was foreshadowing, but I didn't think about it. I was like, no, Aelin's going to have to do this. Like, and especially when they like locked the keys and they didn't take Erewhon, I was like, I literally don't know how they're going to do this. And so to have that twist at the end where super smart Elide was like, okay, we have to separate them. And they like separated him, and it wasn't even Irene, it was Dorian in her body, like shape-shifting into her body, and then they put the word marks around him. I had no idea. No even idea about any of this plan. And then Irene could like, she just like destroyed him. I was freaking out. I was freaking out. Such a creative ending. So, oh my gosh, so creative. And then with Maeve, how did she die? Oh, Fenris killed her. That's what it was. Fenris killed her. And it was so justified. Like, it was so satisfying. Just all of them there with her, with Maeve, and seeing her die. Oh my gosh. Oh, it was so good. Like, the ending was so good. I can't even say that enough. And another place that I was crying, but it was like happy tears. was when like they were all so happy at the very end with all their friends, and then when they were all saying goodbye, like with the little moment with Aylin and Kale and Dorian, and she's just like, I love you guys. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, because it was them from the very beginning, and you see their character grow throughout the whole series, and they're not even the same people as where they started from. It was so satisfying. Like, so satisfying. And today, I can't stop thinking about it. Like, I think it's going to take me like a couple weeks to stop thinking about it. I'm not even going to lie. Like, I wish that I would have finished it earlier. But I'm glad to be where I am now and to finish that book, because I think I just appreciated it even more than what I would have back then. And it was incredible. I am a fan, y'all. Like, I am with you. I am a fan. And I'm sorry it took me so long to be a fan. I really am. I think I'm going to read The Court of Thorn and Roses, that series, really quick, because I've read it in the past, but it's been a while before I read Crescent City, because I've heard like you read the Throne of Glass series first, and then The Court of Thorn and Roses, and then Crescent City. But I don't know. It's probably subjective. And so that's what I think I'm going to do, is just hurry and read that series, because I can basically brush over it since I've read it. And so it's not going to be like an in-depth read. And then, yeah, I'll start on the Crescent City series. But y'all, so good. So freaking good. And so if you have theories, if you have like thoughts about the series, like I want to hear it all. Like I have been going on like book TikTok and on Reddit and just everything, just hearing everyone's like story or everyone's like take on the series, because I am obsessed. I really am. I'm obsessed. So those are my thoughts and feelings on that series. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Yeah, very grateful for you guys. Definitely follow my social medias. I have, yeah, I mean, with starting a job, I'm still adjusting. And so I haven't been on social media a lot lately. It comes and goes in waves. It's like that song. It comes and goes in waves. So yeah, just definitely stay tuned. I keep you updated with everything, and grateful for you guys, and definitely follow me. And wherever you listen to this episode, if you could rate and review, that helps me out so much. And yeah, again, I just appreciate you guys, and I'll talk to you next week.